that at some point there you had an issue with the University of Nairobi concerning some degree. Indeed, the university went ahead to, I think, deregister you or strike your name out of the roll of graduates on account of some forgeries or alleged forgeries. In fact, the matter was taken up by the EACC. I don't know what became of the investigations. So, just to be clear, so that this can be rested once and for all. Do you have only one degree from the University of Nairobi, which is a Bachelor's of Law? Did you present some other degree to the University of Nairobi for admission to this course? Did you ever get a Bachelor of Commerce degree from an Indian university? These were subjects of speculation at the time of the investigations. Two is that on the 28th of April 2021, you were arrested by the DCI. 28th April 2021, or thereabout. You were arrested by the DCI for allegedly using forged signatures to secure some Kenya shillings 530 million loan. What became of this matter? Because I never heard of it again thereafter. Then, when the then or the current, if it may be true, CS for Interior, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, when he appeared before a Senate committee, if I may recall, he made some very disturbing allegations against you, which again is in public domain. That as director of Articon Limited, alongside one Emily Wantai, you forged company documents to facilitate the borrowing of another Kenya's personal loan of Kenya shillings 100 million without the consent of another shareholder or co-shareholder going by the name Kipchumba Ngetich, who was subsequently again fired from the company for refusing to play ball. Those are the words of Dr. Matiang'i. I'm just paraphrasing him. You may want to shed some light on this, even as you seek to be approved to occupy this very high office. Finally, and the Honorable Chungu has touched on it, the affidavit by one Sheila Masindi, who is the Executive Director of Transparency International, drawn on the 14th of October 2022, is also again raising very disturbing issues. One, she of course alleges that you were arrested and charged with the offense of attempted rape on the 30th of January 2021. She goes ahead to say that the matter was eventually dropped. Okay? But the charge raised, those are her words, the charge raised serious issues on your integrity. Kindly comment, make a comment on the same. Thanks.
I think those are sufficiently weighty, quite a mouthful. I would allow you to answer those three before we take some more. Starting with the Deputy Speaker, but you can choose to start from the tail end or the top.
Let me, Mr. Speaker, start from the bottom up. So I'll start by answering Mheshimiwa Wandai. And Mr. Speaker, when in my opening remarks, there is an issue that I raised on some judice, and I will do my best to answer so that I do not touch on the issues that are before court. for determination. Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether this document is with you, and I want to answer the issue, the matter on the affidavit of Beryl on the withdrawal of the issue of the attempted rape that he's talking about. And that is indeed the issue that Mheshimiwa Ichung'wa was trying or sharing, because even before this happened, and shared with my very close friends. Mr. Speaker, I'm an open book. In fact, those that write and say I've litany of cases is an understatement. As I sit here, I have 35 cases in court as I am sitting here. 35. And these 35...
Of civil nature or criminal nature?
They are civil, Mr. Speaker. I have no criminal case in any court in this country. And I'm saying the only criminal case that I had in court is a case between the Republic and I, where the complainant was buried. And it's, I think, since everybody knows the kind of bad relationship that I had with the NDCI, and my political persuasion that, or the political position I'm taken in the last general election, or since the handshake, Mr. Speaker, I was the complainant. I was the complainant in this case because this was a case of abduction, Mr. Speaker, and it's a case where people wanted to extort money from me, and I will share the affidavit by Beryl herself, where she's saying that she has reconciled her conscience and she has reflected on the facts and the circumstances relating to this complaint, and she has decided on her own volition to withdraw. Mr. Speaker, the DCI himself decided that Medika must be turned into a victim. It is just last week when the DCI officers came to my office and even brought me the cash bill and the money that they had recovered from the abductors, because immediately I was abducted and I was released after giving 200,000 shillings and they were asking for 1 million shillings. I reported the matter at Nanyuki DCI offices. The record is there, Mr. Speaker. And I remember I was with you, I don't know whether I shared, Mr. Speaker, when we were there, in Diani, Mr. Speaker, when we were in the Senate committee in Diani in last year, but one where I was asking whether I would get permission to go to Nanyuki to record a statement to this effect so that these abductors would have been taken to court.
I missed the Diani meeting.
2 years ago, Mr. Speaker, the Committee on National Security, we had a meeting in Diani. That is the time.
The committee with you, but yes. I was not in Diani.
Yeah?
I was a member of the committee with you, I agree, but I was not in Diani.
Yeah, that's where we were. I'm saying the time we were in Diani as a committee. Yes, I was sharing it with the committee, our chairman.
Yes.
So this is the time when I was required in Nanyuki to do a statement for them to appear before court. Because I was traumatized, immediately they were arrested. And since I didn't make, it is the DCI himself who ordered the file be transferred from Nanyuki to Nairobi, instructed the DCI then Mr. Muridi. And when this matter came here, people were, other officers were picked, were asked to do different statements. My statements were torn, and they fixed me, framed me as a victim, and that's how I ended up in court. This affidavit from Beru and Oduor, when she decided to withdraw, has given a condition, and because he was cross-examined by the magistrate, and I've put the ruling from the magistrate here, Mr. Speaker, and which I'll be willing to share, that her condition was that the person, I was required to withdraw the extortion complaint I had launched against her and the friends at the Nanyuki. That is what happened, Mr. Speaker. I was framed. The idea was to embarrass me, to demean me.
In reference to the affidavit, just who is the deponent of that affidavit?
He is a complainant, Beryl Onduor.
Beryl?
Beryl Onduor.
Oduor?
Yes.
Beryl Oduor?
Yes, it's called Beryl Akoth Owondo, sorry.
Mr. Speaker, can we get copies of that document?
Yes.
And even as I don't know, as he continues.
So next.
Yes.
Yeah, as he continues, maybe to just clarify clearly where the charges have been dropped within the meaning of Article 157, Article I think 8, or there's simply an application to withdraw or to have them dropped.
Mr. Speaker, the application to withdraw this matter was done by the complainant herself. So an affidavit, and as you know, or you are aware, that the DPP must agree to the withdrawal, send a letter to the DPP, attached an affidavit to the DPP, and the DPP went to court to seek concurrence from the court on whether the matter should be withdrawn or not. That happened, and Akoth Beru testified before a magistrate. She was cross-examined, and the magistrate and nothing else other than to assent to a request to withdraw the matter. The ruling from the magistrate is attached to the affidavit of Beryl Aldora. I did not initiate. The only thing that was of a requirement from them was that I was required to withdraw the extortion complaint that I found with the DCI in Nanyuki. That's how the matter was withdrawn. It was not the DPP who decided to do it, but it was moved by the complainant to withdraw the matter.
And did you withdraw also your complaint then?
To date,
on extortion?
To date, Mr. Chairman, I have not. I have not withdrawn, but I can also tell this committee, I have fought so many cases and I don't think I have the energy. I want to free my mind, given the opportunity to work for this country. I must also let it go. I must forget the pain, the persecution that I've gone through, and I have left to the conscience of all my persecutors and gone to deal with them, because there are many, as I will continue trying to explain, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you also raised.
Speaker, thank you. I just wanted to ask what you just asked, whether he has withdrawn. But maybe in relation to that, have you been able to establish, other than the complainant in that case, because there are also men who are involved, whether these particular people who are involved or DCI officers? Because why I said I was privy to information, Honorable Speaker, is because I had the same sort of incident with Honorable Linturi when criminals poisoned people in Kikuyu, and DCI Kinoti did exactly the same thing he did with this case. Turned around the case, recalled the file from Kikuyu when we adduced evidence to the Kikuyu DCI offices that indeed the people who are involved in poisoning of people in Kikuyu were DCI officers? And I'm asking that because would you be aware whether the other men may have been DCI officers?
Mr. Speaker, probably I may want to pursue that once there is the overhaul of the DCI's office, the overhaul of the staff at the DCI offices.
No, the question is very simple. Were DCI officers involved in what you are calling a frame-up? If they were, yes. If they were not, no.
Mr. Speaker, I may want to imagine that they must have been, because calling for a file for an offense that took place in Nanyuki, bringing it to Nairobi, assigning it to other officers, and then turning me to a victim when I was the complainant, then it cannot...
Turning into the villain, the accused, not the victim.
Sorry. Yes. Yeah, that's what happened, Mr. Speaker. And if I may proceed, because
Mr. Speaker, even as it continues again,
yes,
maybe because now so many issues have been raised and the names have been dropped, is it possible for Honorable Inturi to just explain to us how the abduction took place? Yes. Very, very brief.
I'm going forward, Honorable Induri. I did advise you only answer questions as they are asked. You will be very safe that way.
Mr. Speaker, I think this happened a long time ago, and some things are not very good to remember because they remind you of those bad memories. Probably when you suffer an abduction is when you may be able to really think, and why it's also even necessary to take people through counseling. It is not an easy thing, and especially when the hand of government agencies is involved. Mr. Speaker, let me answer the issue of the 530 million loan that he's talking about.
He alleged two things.
Yes.
You forged documents to get 530 million, and you forged other documents to get 100 million. So if you can answer those, it will help.
Mr. Speaker, I also invite you to a document that I will share with you, and a judgment that was given by Justice Ongood Judge in petition number E068 of 2021. And I need to remind or to inform this committee, which thanks I also give to the Second Senate. I think it is the Second Senate of the Republic of Kenya, because one of the things that I was arrested for, the allegations I was being arrested for when we were to vote for the BBI, are these allegations that Wandai is raising. Mr. Speaker, the matter that Wandai has raised is subject to a High Court matter E138. There are several rulings on this particular issue by Justice Okwani. I will be sharing.
That is the 500 or the 100?
They are all combined. They are combined? Yeah, they are combined. Oh. They are combined, Mr. Speaker. And you remember when I was in my opening remarks, I wanted some clarity on the issue of sub judice, because they are before court. Certain rulings in particular, which I think will be important on that particular area of the forgery, the judge has properly pronounced herself on this matter and have been exonerated. But the other issues relating to the net worth of this company and whatever it is are still before court. And
so only make reference to the matter that has been concluded by the court. The others remain contested between you and your accusers.
yes.
Yes.
So, it is not true, Mr. Speaker, that I did any forgeries. And in fact, this was also a situation where the DCI was ending the complainant the person is referring to take away my investment in this particular company. And Mr. Speaker, when I got arrested, I went to court through a constitutional petition and to stop the prosecution, my prosecution on that matter, without the DCI and the DPP properly putting into context my complaint in this matter, because even in this case, Mr. Speaker, I was the complainant because my company had been taken away by fraudsters. And in the course of investigations and the DCI and other agents and found a way to deal with me, then I was also turned again to be the villain. Mr. Speaker, on the last page of this judgment, which I was going to share, on paragraph 119, because the DCI had completely refused to investigate my complaints in the wisdom of Justice H.I. Mundu, and directed as follows. Having found that the second respondent did not fully act or investigate the petitioner's complaint launched with him, I direct him to act on the same and forward his findings to the first respondent within 19 days. During the 19 days, the first and second respondents shall not charge or arrest the petitioners. Save for the above, then I find no merit in this allegation. Mr. Speaker, I want to share, because this document, and goes to that, is to bring this to demonstrate and to show that even when people read or questions are raised, Mr. Speaker, the criminal justice system was somehow are not willing to listen to my complaints, and I am just waiting for the appropriate time. So I'll give this one.
Yes,
to share with the committee.
Chairman, I'm seated next to the nominee. I'm requesting that so that we don't go into a serious health crisis, tell him to breathe normal. He looks nervous. Tell him just to say, I'm hearing a lot of
Walindure, are you nervous?
No, I am not. I am not, Mr. Speaker.
You are not nervous.
I'm not. How would I be nervous? These are my colleagues. We've been around together for a long time.
Can you, clerk, get the document and the reference, make copies and circulate? Go on, Linturi. You know we are almost halfway your time, and we are still skirting around two issues.
No, tujafika hapo. Okay.
Make progress, Honorable Linturi. Honorable, and I put it to you that you forged documents to obtain two loans, 500 million, 100 million. Your retort is that you didn't, and you have given a document to buttress that, right?
Yes, I have.
Go to the next issue.
I'm trying to get another ruling from Justice Okwani, where
On the same issue?
On the same issue.
Okay.
Because this was a constitutional petition that stopped my arrest, and the ending of the judge was this did not investigate this matter. The other one is where the judge has clearly pronounced herself on the issues of the forgeries that he's alleging and talking about.
So did the court say you forged or you didn't?
I did not.
Okay.
Yes.
Just give the ruling. Just give the documents. The clerks will run through and assist the members so that we make progress.
Can I ask?
Point of information, Honorable Speaker.
Yes.
Yes, you've got 90 minutes. You've spent 40 minutes explaining all sorts of cases. Just say, I was not charged on this one, this is the decision, and here is the judgment. And then we'll be able to look at it when we retreat. And also, Honorable, through the Speaker, if he's guilty of anything, it will catch up with him even if he's minister. So I think for now, let him explain to us. Let's focus on, I want you to tell me what you're going to do as Minister of Agriculture. I want to know if you're qualified to be Minister of Agriculture. I want to know that you're going to transform the agriculture industry in Kenya. That's more urgent. The other items are before other competent institutions.
Chairman. Chairman.
Yes.
Ikaria. I totally agree with Deputy Speaker and your the Vice Chair of this committee. If we continue like this, and as you had alluded to that when you started speaking, is that almost half the time is gone. And what we really want is to know, much as this is part of what we are supposed to be looking into through this committee, but I think it is also important that we also consider on other matters, as Sholei has indicated, so that we can be able to see the suitability of the candidate, or mostly on matters to do with agriculture. As I also agree that what is going on is also part of what we are, but at least as she says, this is the case, this was the judgment, pass it without stories again, because it's going to really give us.
Ferdinand.
Thank you.
Kuthungulula is a friend of mine. I want to declare that, but given that Chair, and he has confessed himself publicly that he has over 35 cases and is tired of these cases. We are looking for somebody who is free, and that means that Solinturi, you may not have the time and the energy, because they'll keep on coming up to do what we want you to do. Tell us how you're going to, with the 35 cases, it's too much. And you have said yourself, you want to get rid of them. So can
Order, honorable members, I don't want it to be a free-for-all. Because we have had a very good sequential process of interrogating nominees. Honorable Induri, what you need to do, this is not a trial court. We are not going to establish whether you attempted to rape or not, whether it has been withdrawn or not, whether you are framed or not. The question was put to you by the Honorable Andai on the rape charges. You have given us documents of withdrawal. This committee will not inquire into exactly what happened. We have a court document. He asked you if you forged documents to secure 2 loans. You have said you didn't. And you have given us documents. Move on to other questions that were asked of you so that we can make progress.
To the university issue, then we can...
Then you asked about the university, and you are supposed to have uttered a degree from India. You have put only 1 degree from the University of Nairobi. And he alleged that you had running arguments with the same university about the same degree. Yeah, if you can answer that, then we can move on to other questions that the Deputy Speaker asked you, and give other members an opportunity also to...
Speaker, I didn't want to disrupt the proceedings.
Yes.
I want to pick from where you said, let us advise our colleague. Honorable Njuri is our colleague. that we are not in court, Honorable Speaker, where you can produce all those details and volumes. Maybe he's gotten used to that 35 cases in court. This is just a vetting process. Just bullet, and we proceed.
To the extent that they touch on his integrity, he is at liberty and is obliged to furnish us with documentation that you look at. But as to his innocence or otherwise, there's another agency that can deal with that. We can make inferences on these issues at the end, but we have no capacity to say whether he's guilty of this or not.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Dawood.
If you allow me to comment, I think we are probably taking the nominee a little too far. If we ask him a question, he replies, let him give us those documents after the sitting, give it to the clerks. But in a matter of 35 cases, Honorable Wanyonyi is talking about, that is neither here, neither there. He just mentioned it.
It is actually the nominee himself who has walked too far.
He has just said that.
Yes.
That is
and I had told him that to restrict your answers to the questions as they are being asked. And you'll see we'll move very smoothly. So if you finished with Honorable, and I talk about the degrees, come to Honorable Sholei, then I give another batch of colleagues to raise issues. We have about 20 of us, each one itching to ask you something. You know, agriculture is the bedrock of every lively activity of every individual in this country. Those who don't farm still eat what farmers farm.
Sure. Can I interject?
Yes,
I was wondering, because we already have 1 degree and we can see it here, and we have other important matters. We can allow to tackle the other questions, and then he'll give that other document later.
No, the question was asked, he has to answer it.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, let me answer this question. Mr. Speaker, I'll give you a document which you'll be able to peruse as asked. And the issue that was an issue with the University of Nairobi. And when my studies were discontinued, that I was doing my Masters of Law. It is not the undergraduate course I was doing. And I had been admitted to pursue a Masters of Law. And Mr. Speaker, I was registered that time.
Let me make it very easy for you.
Yes.
Honorable Inturi.
Yes.
Do you have any dispute with the University of Nairobi that is alive over your LLB degree?
None, Mr. Speaker.
End of story.
That is it. Number 2, have you ever uttered anywhere a degree from India?
No, Mr.
Do you have a degree from India?
And Mr. Speaker, yes. And the documents are here to support that. This matter has been canvassed in court in 2 cases, in 3 cases actually, in 2017. Their own documents here. And India. I will not be able to mention on that because the same matter again has been raised. The hearing for this case is on 4th of November.
Issues around your Indian degree.
Yes.
Hold on. Issues around your Indian degree are in court.
Yes.
Is that the reason why you did not attach that disputed Indian degree?
That is not really, Mr. Speaker. It's also because the documents that I attached are the documents I'm able to access. One of the issues where I raised...
That's exactly what I'm asking you. You attached the Kenyan degree from the University of Nairobi because it has no issues.
It doesn't have issues.
The matter rests there. Answer other questions.
Speaker, how does it rest, really? When he has said that he has got an Indian degree, the certificate must be with him, the degree certificate must be with him somewhere.
He says,
yes,
if I got him right, he has an Indian degree, it has issues around it, the issues are in court, they are active, and therefore sub judice. And we are not here to inquire into his degrees. In any case, the possession of a degree is not a requirement for him to be a minister. But if he has a disputed degree and the degree is found invalid, it goes down to his integrity. Yes.
Yes.
That's the only issue that is available to you to pursue.
And that's what I'm pursuing actually. The issue of integrity.
Question, a very clear question, and I want a very clear answer so that we make progress.
Yes. The issue is, we wanted the Honorable Linturi to confirm if he ever held a degree from an Indian university. He has said yes. And I'm asking, can we see a copy of that degree certificate? I am being told we can't see it because the matter is in court. That's what I'm finding very difficult. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, you know, I also explained the circumstances in which I find myself and why even other certificates are not there. There is also a court order here that bars me from accessing my own house, where all documents.
Mr. Speaker, I give up.
Yeah, it is here. That's why I said that in many cases, Mr. Speaker. And if I may read, this training the respondent.
Hold on, let him respond.
So, Mr. Speaker, even as I sit here, there are documents, my titles, my logbooks, my everything I can't access because there is a bar.
Honorable Induri, there is an article written by Lord Denning called "The Witness Who Talked Too Much." If you have an Indian degree, say yes. If you don't have it here, say you don't. The reason you don't have it, you are barred from accessing your premises where it is. We leave it there.
Yeah, I don't have it here.
Yes.
Yes.
You're just volunteering and helpful information.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let me go to Shelley's question.
Answer the questions by the
Yes,
deputy
yes,
speaker.
that's what I want to get to.
Yes.
And, but this document is important. Mr. Speaker, thank you. Let me get to react
Honorable Speaker, I'm beginning to think that the candidate is actually avoiding to explain to us how you're going to transform the agriculture industry in Kenya.
Let me get there.
Because you're spending way too much time on the other questions that are not even relevant to this particular docket.
But
Mr. Speaker,
I'd ask a point of
going to Mbos Sholei's question that the 25-year-old boy asked, I want to agree with her that agriculture, Mr. Speaker, contributes to almost 60% of our GDP, and to transform this country, we require to seriously invest in agriculture. To change this country and to make sure that each one of us as Kenyans is comfortable, we need to re-engineer our ways in how we conduct ourselves in the field of agriculture. Mr. Speaker, and when I speak about agriculture, is in horticulture, in apiculture, in livestock and everything else. So, Mr. Speaker, first of all, what I want to do, considering that agriculture is an evolved function, agriculture, where I will sit, if approved by you as a minister, will basically more deal with the issue of policy. Crop husbandry is in the domain of our county governments. The first thing I want to do is to have a serious sitting with the governors, and possibly, because I believe in teamwork, I believe in building proper networks, I have also a meeting with their CEC's agriculture to see how together we can be able to transform agriculture. Mr. Speaker, I know we have a problem in this country. I know the youth can easily be employed if we were to do our agriculture right and correctly. And I'm happy both Sholei's children is really interested in doing agriculture. But if you were to speak to very many young men and women and whose mindset I am willing and ready to engage to change, is that some of them have taken agriculture as a form of punishment. Many of them are afraid of that, and many of them, because of failure for a guaranteed way of trying to assess what incomes or what you can be able to predictably be able to assess from a crop have made it very difficult for many of our children to engage in it. So I want to pursue possibilities of how we'll be able to encourage our young people and everybody else to get into the farms and do it. Mr. Speaker, I want to invite, including all the members of parliament here, we cannot be crying of lack of food when we are not doing it by ourselves. Before we get out there to cry, there is famine. What is it that we are doing as leaders from the family level to feed ourselves first of all? I want to ask, to call for a candid, robust discussion on how each one of us can be able to feed himself and run away from the reliance of going to markets to buy food when you are not sure where that food has come from.
The question she asked you, the Honorable Inturi, is that what are your plans to ensure that farming becomes more profitable and farmers are assured of a predictable income?
Mr. Speaker.
Then combine that with a question from Ichungwa that your docket is the highest in employment multiplier effect. What are you going to do to ensure that agriculture becomes a major job creation engagement? Ichungwa, that was your question, right?
Yes.
Yes. And how you'll dismantle milk cartels in the sector. Take a minute to answer those three questions.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, we now have to see on how we can hand value to our agricultural products. Those that are doing, for example, dairy, we must know how we can be able to engage them from their own farms, from an area where probably you can be able to bring in farmers to pull together. So for example, collect enough milk, see how we can have processors that can be able to hand value to our milk so that we're able to produce other other products from processed milk. That we will be able to add value. Farmers may be able to get good return from their investments in agriculture. Mr. Speaker, if we were to be able to seriously subsidize on farm inputs, fertilizer, since we will be able to bring the cost of production of our food from whatever cost it is, because government would have taken some bit of cost by providing subsidies. That we may be able to hand to encourage the farmer to create and see more value from his produce, from whatever he does on a daily basis. Mr. Speaker, I also want to say that if we were to make sure that there is good return, and if we were really to ensure that once a farmer is able to predict what price he may be able to get from the market, then we'll be able to encourage. I want to, Mr. Speaker, to adopt the technology so that I can be able to link markets, and from a platform, when you are sitting by application of e-technology, one can be able to check and know if I'm doing carrots and I'm in Meru, or Washingishu, what is the going price of a kilo of carrots in Kisumu, in Nairobi, and whichever other market. So that way, one may be able to take his produce on how, or to any market that will give him the highest return. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to discuss with the county governments to implement the warehouse receipt system. The warehouse receipt system, Mr. Speaker, if implemented, we will be able to hold our food and our produce and be able to sell when markets or the prices of food are good enough for return of investment. Ichungwa raised a question on how we will be able to deal with the cartels in the ministry, and we intend to dismantle them. Mr. Speaker, I also want to say that I want to ensure that when I get to the ministry with your approval, God willing, then I want to have a Kenya farmers database. The Kenya farmers database will be able to show me or tell me how many farmers do you have that are doing milk, that are doing cabbage, that are doing maize, or whatever type of a crop that there is. And that way, even when we get to making subsidies to the farmer, then we can with precision say which farmer is going to benefit from what subsidy, whether it's seed, whether it's fertilizer, and that we also would require an e-voucher system so that in partnership with our National Cereals and Produce Board or agrovets, we can be able to make sure that person that really benefits from the subsidies that we'll be giving as government are the really people that require that particular support. To increase productivity, Mr. Speaker, and for value, we also may have to go an extra mile to educate our farmers on what best crop grows where. And with that kind of data, then we will be able to maximize on productivity and avail information to our farmers so that you do not plant barley in an area that requires you to plant rice, or if you just wake up in Meru and decide how to plant maize here, yet milk cannot do very well in that particular ecological zone. So getting information to farmers will be critical, moving along with them will be very important, and customer education and training will be very critical if we really have to produce maximally and farmers get a really value of their produce. Mr. Speaker, to deal with cartels, as Ichungwa said, these cartels are the same, are the cartels that when you give subsidies of fertilizer, they wait for the fertilizer, buy it, store, repack, and then sell those at exorbitant prices. We will require, Mr. Speaker, to really map out or be able to get the numbers that are supposed to benefit from these subsidies, and this I intend to use an e-platform where we will have a record of all the farmers that we are talking about, so that the final beneficiaries of our subsidies, our knowledge of the information that we want to disseminate as a ministry, then go to the right people.
Thank you. I'll take 5. So note them and answer them. And this time, let's be conscious with time. And members, 1 question each. Jeanette, Owen Bayer, Robert Mbui, Ferdinand Onyonyi, Murugara. Everybody will have a chance.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I wanted to ask the nominee, when he was giving the story of his life, how he went through, whether he has ever been to a seminary, whether you have been enrolled to a seminary one time, but more importantly, what plan do you have to the collapsed sugar industry, like Moroni, Chemail, Sony, Mumias, and Nzoia companies? How do you intend to revive them?
Thank you, Speaker.
The president in his wisdom has separated the Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation. But we also know that statistics show that rain-fed agriculture has failed this country, and irrigation is the way to go to spur agriculture. But as it stands now, if approved by this committee, you'll be Minister for Agriculture, but the docket for irrigation, for which you will depend on largely to produce food, is in another ministry. How do you intend to sync that so that your hands are not tied? Given that the president in his speech said that we intend to increase irrigation to 1.4 million in 3 years. How would you reconcile that? Will your hands be tied such that you will not produce food because you'll say irrigation is not in your hands? And also you find that there are some high productive areas in this country that have not been looked at positively by the previous regimes. Farming in coconut, in cashew nut, in Bixa at the coast has not been given the due attention that it is supposed to have, and areas like coast have not been helping in growing the GDP in this country, and yet there's high potential in those areas. Look at these two questions, nominee. How do you work in the Ministry of Agriculture to support this country to grow the GDP in agriculture? Thank you.
Robert.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker. You know, Kenya is grappling with the drought, and a lot of Kenyans are going hungry now. So this is an extremely important docket, because the person who holds that docket has to deal with the issue of food security and ensure that Kenyans don't starve to death. Now, I want to, and you know, Chair, the issue of integrity is also critical in helping us determine the suitability of a candidate to any office. Now, in the 11th Parliament that I served with the Honourable nominee here, while he was serving as MP for Igembe South, the nominee presented a petition to members of Parliament to sign for him so that he could remove the then CS for devolution on the scandal that was rocking this country of about 1.9 billion of NYS. And members of Parliament did sign that petition. Mr. Speaker, I was one of them because he convinced me, and there were really weighty issues. But on the day that this petition was to be read on the floor of the House, the nominee did not show up, and did not show up for quite a while after that. And when he resurfaced, that issue seemed to have been put under the carpet. Maybe because we do not want a CS that might also abandon farmers. Maybe he can tell us why he abandoned members of Parliament.
Ferdinand.
I'm laughing kidogo because I was also in that parliament, but I didn't know those details. Mheshimiwa, you talked about the warehouse receipts, and I think you don't understand the concept. I want to give you the light on the warehousing receipts. Is where the farmer takes the goods to the warehouse and is given a title deed for whatever quantity equivalent to the value that you have taken. Then from there you can use a title deed to do business, to do other business. That concept, actually, I am one of those that worked on it from India. So my question is, and you seem to know something about it, what are you going to do to open up more warehouse and receipt outlets in the country to be able to do business, so that the people can be able to take their goods to the warehouse, get the receipts, and do business? Thank you.
Wakili.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nominee, drought is ravaging the country, and the reason why Kenyans are suffering is due to the fact that we do not have a good policy on food security. Matters food are governed by the Agriculture and the Food Act, which vests execution in the Agriculture and the Food Authority. We've been told recently, especially by your predecessor, that the ministry contemplates repealing the Agriculture and the Food Act and also abolish the authority so that it can deal with individual crops instead of dealing with crops lumped together for purposes of production, marketing, and distribution. In your own estimation, is that a good idea for the country, and is it going to serve us more positively, or we are digging ourselves into a grave as far as food is concerned?
Thank you. You can answer those 5.
Thank you, Chairman. Mheshimiwa Junet, I asked about the revival of the sugar industry, and I think that's a good question coming from him because it comes from that side. Mr. Speaker, I think the sugar industry plays or employs very many people, and is a source of employment for young people and others that work from that particular end. And when I interacted with the sugar companies when I was the chairman of public investment, most of these sugars companies were making losses. I think it is the time, Mr. Speaker, I think we really require a serious discussion, because the investment of government in a number of these sugar industries is huge. We've had bailouts by government to these sugar companies a number of times, and we are required to check on whether there is real return on the money that government invests in them, and then open a candid, robust discussion with all stakeholders in trying to understand how best we can revive the sugar industry. Mr. Speaker and Chairman, I would ask Junet to become part of this discussion, because you may understand this area better, but I am told or I hear that there has been discussions on how to privatize these companies for maximum productivity and for profitability. If that is the direction we may end up going, then Mr. Speaker, and since all stakeholders will be involved, and if we are to go that way, of course, Parliament will be involved, then at the personal level I wouldn't have any problem, because I will not be there to dictate. I will only be guiding the process, and it will be all inclusive, all consultative, so that we have one common ground on how we need to revive this important sector in our economy. Mr. Speaker, I think when asked how I will be able to produce food when the irrigation docket is not in my domain, and I want to say that government works collectively. I am sure, and we cannot succeed without water, want to grow food without water. And anybody that cared to listen to my impulsive speech yesterday during the Mashujandi celebrations, he has offered or inviting people to partner to come up with around 100 dams that will be able to assist us in providing water for irrigation. I want and I believe that because cabinet decisions are collective, I will personally be able to speak to my sister Alice Wame, because she is in that particular docket, and because we must all deliver as government on how we can break those perceived barriers, if any, so that at least together we can be able to grow food, together we can build the synergy and ensure that our country is food secure, because our reliance on food, our infant agriculture, Mr. Speaker, is not anything that we can really rely on. An interesting question was also raised by my good friend Mheshimiwa Mbui on my integrity, or whether I will run away and leave the farmers or leave the farmers alone. Mr. Speaker, even as we discuss that issue, I think for those that have been bunge with me, because I think we've served the longest, you have served the longest in the House, and I think I'm the second longest serving. I think my record also speaks for itself in view of the committees that I chaired and the recommendations I've done as a committee, which went to the extent of indicting ministers when we sat in the same house as ministers, and the latest being my investigation committee that I chaired, investigating the possible loss of money from the Ministry of Education by the acquisition of the Ruaraka land where the country lost 1.5 billion. I don't waver. I am incorruptible. You can only persuade me, Mr. Speaker. So to get to the withdrawal of this particular matter, because that matter, Mr. Speaker, it is true and a lot of support in the House. And Mr. Speaker, those that were in that parliament, when all this happened, I came to the chamber and rose on a point of order and a personal statement, and I documented every step that took place, what went on, who called who, where that letter was signed from, and that matter isn't. Unless if you allow, Mr. Speaker, I can mention. You know, Mr. Speaker, this country, you allow me to explain the circumstances.
Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, for those that have never known, you see, when a gun is put on your head, and you understand when you have a CEO who is almost a terrorist, then there are many people that cannot withstand the pressure, the intimidation, and the threats that exist. I can tell you the letter to withdraw was signed.
To withdraw the motion?
Yes. Was drafted by one J. Muturi. The letter I was asked to sign, Njomo called, Speaker Muturi was called from somewhere. He was along, I think in Kilimani, was told, go back to the house, there's a letter is being brought to withdraw that motion. Jomo Gichaka, past 8 o'clock, delivered the letter to the then Speaker, J. Muturi. Those are the circumstances that I found myself in, and you know.
You signed the letter?
Mr. Speaker, yes.
Point of order, Honorable Speaker. Point of order.
Yes, that's it.
Honorable
and the President
Speaker,
was there then. So, Mr. Speaker, that is the situation, that is the condition. And that is from that time when my relationship and him went sour. Because that thing has really tormented me. I've spoken about it, but members continue asking. They may not have known, just like all these others were all organized and planned by his agencies. Lastly, Mr. Speaker,
the question from Ferdinand and Murugara.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the warehouse system, receipt system was passed. It's a law that is in this country. It's supposed to be implemented by the county government. It is the county government that is supposed to license warehouses. And I think that we will not succeed if we do not work very closely with the county governments and deliberately and intentionally work very closely with the governors. I even want to, I will maybe proposing laws to even operationalize this more, Mr. Speaker, because I believe food security cannot be a function of the national government alone. If crop husbandry is in the hands of the governors. The governors must participate in ensuring that Kenya is food secure. Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage and I want to propose to the governors when we sit down, and by use of this system, because this system, unless my understanding is different from yours, is where the licensed warehouse will be able to mop up the produce in those particular areas. And because I am even told this system is a serious support from some donors and other financial institutions, where if you have a problem, you may be able to be paid up to a certain percentage of the value of your crop. That way, you address your immediate financial needs, as when then the men and women in charge of houses are looking for good prices for that produce. This way, if we were to, the county governments were to do it professionally and organized in a good manner, then we will be able to ensure that in whatever part of this country, at least the amount of food held in our stores or in our houses are clearly known. And this way, Mr. Speaker, you can also encourage commodity exchange through these warehouses, so that if, for example, you do not have money, you have tomatoes, the other one has cabbages, and that's what you want, you can always agree on how to deal with it. So I want to ensure in the participation of governors, I also create county fund reserves, so that the county fund reserves will be able, from when there is need for immediate address in terms of our food solutions that we may have within the counties, then the counties can be able to come in and support it. So I want to assure you, Mr. Wanyonyi, we'll get a framework on how we can do it. In any case, just like I'm saying, this cannot be done without legislation. We will be getting back to you. We will be asking you to kindly support us in this particular matter.
Mr. Chairman. No, I wanted to make a clarification.
Yes.
If you allow me to.
Yes.
This, let me tell you that as I'm talking, this parliament sent some people to South Africa. We saw how it's operating. The Ministry of Agriculture, for our case, will have a department, and already have as a department, dealing with the warehousing system. In fact, as I'm talking, the outgoing minister opened a warehousing system in Kitale, which I witnessed, and I think 2 other places. So just tell us that if you are given the opportunity, you'll be able to come up, you'll be able to enforce the already established system, so that can be able to move, as you are saying. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I am willing and ready, if approved, to engage. And those systems that are functional.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't want to disturb. I wanted to wait for him to finish. But when Wanyonyi did, I thought maybe at this point I need to clarify that on the question I had asked, and this has to go on record, Chair, that on the day that this petition was to be presented to Parliament, it was not withdrawn, Mr. Speaker. It was on the order paper. But what happened is that the nominee did not show up. So that is a report that was in the House. That is what is unanswered. It was called out, and he wasn't there to move it. So I wanted that to be clear, so that, for the record. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Speaker, I am not trying to defend myself, but he knows at what time, in most cases, the order papers are out. I've seen the Speaker was called very late in the night, and the letter was taken to him. So I was not in charge of the Secretariat of Parliament or how that got it there, but that is the truth. And I can always also go back to check the unanswered what I recorded that particular time.
Point of order, Chair.
Speaker Murugara.
Yes, Mishi.
Point of order, Chair. Honorable Chair. Does that insinuate that the nominee is weak and cannot withstand political pressure?
If Nje Muturi can bully you to sign a letter.
Not by Nje.
Chair,
Mr. Speaker.
maybe Chair, not to interrupt Linturi, but may I also make disclosure that it is in actual fact myself who got the Honorable Linturi to Jacaranda Hotel, if he remembers. And the circumstances then, if you know the kind of president we were dealing with, when Linturi tells you when you have a gun over your head, you really have no choices to make. And it is indeed true that letter was typed by Nje Muturi in the business center of Jacaranda Hotel. And I was then the vice chair of the Public Investments Committee, and I was directed by none other than President Uhuru Kenyatta to ship the Honorable Linturi out of this country in a trip that we are going to Turkey that weekend.
So you connived into undermining Linturi's integrity?
We did not connive, Honorable Speaker. And that's what I'm saying. It may not be a reflection of the Honorable Linturi.
Anyway, let's go on with other issues.
Or strength.
I'll now give the floor to Murugara. We have 6 minutes of your allotted time.
Mr. Murugara asked whether I have intentions of disbanding AFA. Yeah, so just like I've said before, AFA is a creature of an act of parliament. And Mr. Speaker, a minister or as a cabinet secretary has no power to amend or to do any other form of changes to any act of parliament. Parliament must be involved. I have not gotten there yet. I have not personally interacted with institutions that fall under AFA, and I will not be fair to say whether AFA is living to its mandate or not. But in your wisdom, if there is wisdom of this committee that you recommend me serve in that docket, then one of the first things I'll be doing is to engage AFA and other stakeholders to understand really how we can either transform that institution, whether it's living up to its mandate. But just like when I was trying to inquire, I know it has some bit of challenges because I'm told it has no bond. Maybe probably it has remained dysfunctional either for strategically or for any other reason, I do not know. But I will try to inquire and see how best we can be able to address the issues that touch on the mandate of AFA, and I will be involving the members of parliament kindly.
Posing Daud Mishi Koech Amisi.
Thank you, Speaker.
Question each. We have 4 minutes.
Speaker, from where I come from, it is argued that you don't milk a stone, you only milk a cow. And I want to be on record, Speaker, because we are not making a chair, because we are not making any determination now, so that it's known by the time we are going to make our determination that the nominee is trying to use court to gag the committee from getting issues of integrity on him, Speaker. That is very critical. And to exit my question therefore for him is, there are 70% of this country is arid and semi-arid, or thereabout. And in those areas, they keep animals, cows, camels, goats, and so on. When it comes to the Minister of Agriculture, it's about crops most of the time. Should you get an opportunity, Honorable Linturi, what new thing will you bring to this 70% people living in 70% of our country in terms of recognizing cows, camels, goats as assets, as investment, so that, Honorable Chair, they can be collateral. Somebody can go to bank and get some assistance. We are keeping things which don't help us, Honorable Chair, until when they are sold or they are slaughtered. So what will Honorable Linturi bring that is new, that will give hope to this 70% of the people living in this country? I thank you.
Daud. Thank you, Chair. Congratulations, Honorable Mitheka. and I thank the President for nominating you. My question is, you stood for election as a governor, as you have already said, and you got more than about 190,000 votes, and that was good. You had a manifesto as a governor, and there is a manifesto of Kenya Kwanza. Could you probably tell us the cross-cutting issues between your manifesto and Kenya Kwanza, and if there were variances in your manifesto and Kenya Kwanza? You have said you will work with the governors. Will you work with our governor, Meru governor, in doing whatever you're going to be doing if you are put in this place? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, just before my question, I just want to add on what the nominee has just answered, Honorable Junet's question in terms of reviving the sugarcane industry. I also want to add that you also need to put in your plans the issue of cashew nuts, Bixa, and coconut industry, so that it just don't remain as a rhetoric during campaigns, but a real action to be done to ensure that we have this kind of industry. And my question would be, during Mashujaa Day yesterday, His Excellency the President has talked about putting up a fertilizer plant, East Africa Community Fertilizer Plant. Also talked a lot on subsidies on crops and even farming equipment. But more so, we have had little in terms of livestock and fish farming. What plans do you have as KK government to ensure that we also integrate these other two sectors in terms of agriculture? Thank you.
Thank you. Coach?
I will be very quick. Honorable Linturi, drought is ravaging this country. More than 4 million Kenyans are staring at starvation. Crops are perishing. Livestock is dying. What is your plan in future to cushion farmers from such drought? And number two, what is the KK plan to make sure that we do not necessarily have to, in future, just stare at farmers lose animals and crops? So what will be the plan to cushion farmers on such?
Do I Speaker, do I answer?
I think I was to ask another.
Those are 5.
No, they are not 5. I gave to 5 members: Posing, Dawood, Mishi, Koech, now Amisi.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. You know, once a German architect once said that the details are the devil is in the details. And when you are asked chronologically to indicate the education records and the employment records, of course, it needs to have time to each one of the events. But there seems to be a gap between the time you finished Igembe Boys Secondary and becoming a director of 5 companies. Due to an attachment, internship, worked in any one of our firms around before becoming a director. And you know, the hustlers are also watching how to learn from public officers how to reach where they are. So we could also see the proper chronological occurrence of your education up to the working. And the 5 companies, are they active? Then how will you manage the docket of agriculture, which is the backbone of our economy, while you are still a director of 5 huge companies? Thank you.
You can quickly answer those 5.
Mr. Speaker, first let me answer a question raised by Kosing, and I want to put it clearly that I don't use a courts to gag a committee. When you look at when those orders were issued, Chair,
that was just a side comment. Answer the real questions.
I want to ensure that I have a livestock master plan to take care of the pocots, to take care of the pastoralists, be able to identify how many goats, how many cows, how many chicken that we have, Mr. Speaker. And I am you realize Kenya, I think, is importing meat, yet we have the third largest ant in Africa. I am going, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that progressively we will be able to see how we can manage our arable land, and so that we are able, because the problem that we have majorly with the pastoralists is pasture. I want to introduce something I would want to call saline agriculture, where we will be able to tap the waters, probably like in Turkana, because water is saline, and be able to grow pasture and grass can grow there. There is no land that cannot be able to be utilized to support our livestock, because that is the major problem that you have in feeding the livestock. It's sure for them to have value, and because abattoirs and land, just like I said, the issues to do with livestock are also with the county governments. I know there are those feedlots that we can be able, in conjunction with the 21 harried areas governors, to see how we can organize the livestock sector so that they have pasture, water for their cows. But I know, and this answer will have to come from them, because they are pastoralists, how we'll be able to keep the animals together, because even when these pastoralists or animals are moving from one place to another, there is a lot of loss of weight and minerals, and that is why you realize their livestock are not able to feed or to fetch so much money. So I will be engaging you. I'm not a pastoralist. I'm willing to listen, come up with ideas, and everybody else, because that's my duty, to address the problems that Kenyans have through consultation and advice. So I'm open-minded. My policy is open. Mr. Speaker, the question Rahim asked whether I will implement my manifesto. My manifesto ended when I lost the position of governor in Meru. But I want to tell you that manifesto borrowed seriously from the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, because we are in those consultative meetings, and I wanted to align my thoughts and ideas along the Kenya Kwanza plan to address the problems of our people in Meru, because I would not have done it alone, without consultation, without working closely with the national government. So whatever we talked about and whatever is in the Kenya Kwanza government manifesto is what going to plan. That's the campaign I'm going to lead to espouse on government policy and agenda for us to be able to serve this country, and in a manner that is so inclusive. Mr. Koech, you talked about drought ravaging the country. It is true that there is drought, but allow me to say that we have and people are almost losing lives because of lack of food. We'll have immediate, medium-term and long-term plans on how to can deal with this situation. And one of the things that I think and the government has already started doing is the provision of relief food to those people that are quite vulnerable. It may not, I would not want it to be a thing that we must really be happy about. Let it be, food relief must be a last resort. And irrigation, just like the president said yesterday, is something we'll have to ensure that any irrigatable land that is available for farming, then we put it into agriculture. I want to persuade the government or the cabinet to also be able to come to agree, because we have so many pieces of land that are owned by government. You realize it's a shame when we find that the prison service is buying food or money is allocated to buy food, yet there are a lot of labor force and the very big tracts of land lying idle without any agricultural activity. So I'll be pleading for government to find it or to give a directive or a policy on how we can utilize government land institutions that have big land for use for agriculture. Our universities, those research institutions, how we can apply those pieces of land for agriculture and even for training, knowledge transfer to our young people who want to do agriculture. Then of course, agroforestry will be very important. Then how and to engage everyone else to deal with the effects of climate change. I will have to talk with my counterpart in the Ministry of Education so that we also revive again the 4K clubs in our schools. I don't know how they end and dying because as our children grow up, then they're able to know, to adopt that we must start ourselves from the school and be able to appreciate how important agriculture is. Mr. Amisi, you asked about the flow. That was completely deliberate because the documents that I've given out here, because people that are alleging, I don't want to give them an opportunity to prove their case. It is their business to prove what they are saying. So by so doing and understanding the powers of this committee and the correctness of the information that you give them, because it's also binding, I didn't want to assist them prove their own case. And just like I think both said, if there is anything that is not correct, it's a matter of time. But I want to say that whatever I am giving out here is true to the best of my knowledge.
Honorable members, we have so far done, just hold your cards, we've done 2 hours and 5 minutes with this nominee. Can we agree to an addition of 15 minutes, then we close? So I'll give all the remaining honorable members 1 question each. Naisula 1, go to Gikaria 1, Mole 1, Raso 1, Shurie 1, Mary 1, Mukami 1, in that order.
Honorable Speaker, my question was not answered.
Honorable Inturi,
yes.
Mama Mishi asked this question.
Russell.
You have talked about sugar.
Russell.
What about other crops like bixa, like coconut, like cashew nuts? What are you going to do about them? Note that and start with it after taking the other questions.
I answered.
Yeah, like that.
Naisula, 1 question each, please.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Honorable Inturi, you know, governments are there to serve the needs of Kenyans and actually prioritize. And these needs are not static. They change, you know. Now we have drought, then we are hopeful that we'll get the rains, and so it's not static. And right now, the biggest problems Kenyans are having, apart from the economy, is just having food on their table. And so when they ask for unga to be 70 shillings, people just want food. And that is the problem right now. But from what we have had recently is that the government has subsidized fertilizer, which is very good. You're saying you're going to subsidize for production. But for consumption, we want food now. We know as we wait for the crops to grow, for the fertilizer to get to the farmers, what measures will you put in place to see, now that you have removed the subsidy on the maize or on the flour, but what will people eat as we wait for the crops to grow?
Gikaria?
Thank you.
Then Raso.
Honorable Inturi, I know you are friends, and my question, just like Mishi has indicated, as you address other crops, can you please also address about pyrethrum, potatoes and milk? Because these are key things within our region, and particularly the milk has really dropped. And lastly, though I'm not a fan of Wajakoya, but he came up with an idea that this country, about this Bangi issue, I'm not his supporter, but is it something that can be considered for purposes of medicinal value and getting foreign exchange, not for consumption? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Honorable Mituri, you still owe me my signature of that day and you disappeared. My question is, agriculture is devolved to the county government. And when I and you were growing up, we used to have agricultural extension officers who were a very good link between the farmer and the government. I've heard you say that you want to have a database of all the farmers in Kenya. How you'll do that, you have not given us the details. And I want to hear your comment on genetically modified crops, that is the GMO, in the basis of whereby we know most of the GMO seeds, they don't regenerate. You cannot harvest a GMO seed and go and replant again. And the effect they have to the society and especially to the farmers. How are you going to sustain farmers with a program of seeds? Because I can foresee your government under the government of today is agitating very much about GMO, whereby we lose the indigenous seeds we have in this country, the original maize, the original beans, the original ndengu, and the rest. What are your thoughts on that? And if you can detail your plan, and especially on the agricultural extension officers vis-a-vis is a devolved government function.
Russell. Thank you very much, Speaker. Honorable Linturi, agriculture to GDP contributes 24% and employs 60% of the Kenyan workforce. So when you say that agriculture is devolved, it is devolved, then I see you are likely to run away from the main issues that affect the Kenyan. But that is not a debate. I don't want an answer. But my main question is 90% of meat consumed in Kenya comes from the arid and semi-arid land where the pastoralists live. You have not talked about the livestock. And I foresee if this committee is going to approve your nomination, you are likely to talk about miraa, tea, coffee, peredram, and other crops that is grown in less than 10% of the Kenyan landmass. Tell us, what do you have in mind in terms of bringing livestock to be one of the main GDP contributors for Kenya? Thank you, Chair.
Sharia.
Thank you, Chair, and I echo my colleague here. I hope you will come up with a good plan for the livestock marketing and livestock production. And my question is, what is your take about the Galana Kulalu project? Thank you.
Chair, with your permission, I have three concerns and I'll be very brief. The first one is a question that I've been requested to ask. The warehousing receipt system. Chair, I'll be very brief and very fast.
If you convey an outsider's question, you surrender your own.
Okay, it's related to what I wanted to ask, so I'll just combine. The warehousing receipt system has been put in the Ministry of Trade under Executive Order number 1 of 2022 by the President. Whereas the Act and the regulations was done by the Ministry of Agriculture, and it was meant specifically for crops and livestock. So how does that misplacement sit with you? And because it's related to what I wanted to ask on, Mr. Speaker, currently the government is using National Serious Produce Board warehouses
to store the fertilizer, the subsidized fertilizer. So my concern, because we represent farmers from the rural areas who need to access this fertilizer, what plans do you have in terms of distribution, ease access and short distances? Because you'll find this depot is in one center within a county that is so wide, and it has several sub-counties, because that is contributing to corruption that is still being experienced because of the long distance and what have you. And as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, the issue of segregation, because now GMO is going to be commercialized in the country. Kenyans are concerned. What are you going to do to ensure there's that distinction in terms of, if I'm going to the supermarket and I want to buy a non-GMO product, are you going to have plans to ensure that there's that segregation, while at the same time ensuring there is safety, and how you're going to counter the risk? I think I'll leave it there. The other one, my colleague asked. Thank you.
Mheshimiwa Mukami.
Congratulations to our nominee.
Thank you.
Honorable Inturi, I want to ask you one question regarding the grantee minimum return. Considering it's not very popular in a free market, I would like to hear how you are going to do about that.
You can quickly answer those questions, starting with what was left of Mishi Mbogo, and then Naisula down to Mukami.
Mr. Speaker, if it may have escaped Nishi, when I was discussing about the livestock, on how we will be able to bring them together to add value, I also mentioned that I will be and we will not achieve adding value to them without us working together. So if it's for coconut and other nuts that can produce edible oils, because there are many that are there. So I'll be open so that we understand how it can be done. What costing? In any case, I think there is commitment from government to add value, so that we can, within the value agricultural value chain, we can be able to get more. So because there is that goodwill, it's not something that will be starting. It's something that I will be following up with all the stakeholders so that we work together. And Aishula asked how on what our immediate plan to provide food. I think I said earlier from the beginning that if people are dying today and they want food, the fastest way to ensure that their food is relief food. You give them the relief food because that is what they require for now, as we organize ourselves to address the issue of lack of food in the medium term and the long term.
Chair, mine was on the price of unga, because the relief one had been answered.
The price of unga, Mr. Speaker, I don't think will also come down immediately, because unless government is willing and ready to continue with the subsidy to bring down the cost of unga. This is a matter that will be discussed, and once discussions are on, we will be alive to the fact that we really have to do something so that our people can be able to eat. And let me also take this opportunity to answer the question that was also raised by Mule, because that revolves around provision of food when brought about the issue of GMO. If you look at what informed the lift of ban of GMO, is that problem of lack of food. And we'll have to make choices, Mr. Speaker, and ask ourselves whether we need to let our people die or adopt GMO. I have not seen anywhere there has been any scientifically published in any journal where GMO has been sent to really be harmful to human beings. Mr. Speaker, I I want to
Point of clarification, Mr. Speaker, to the nominee, and he need to probably do more research. There is a great scientist in France who has done extensive research on GMO, reports done, and why the government of the day of the late Honorable Mwai Kibaki banned GMO was based on scientific proof of how dangerous the GMOs can be. And the worst part of it is, honorable nominee, the seeds cannot regenerate. You cannot replant a GMO seed, and that's scientific.
I wish you gave me time to continue answering this question, because the research on document that's popularly referred to was later pulled down, or was the scientists sent, and this is the information that I have, because even in this country, our biosafety and the biotechnology experts that we have, and people must really be able to understand exactly what GMO is all about. GMO, from my layman's understanding, is the transfer of genetic material, and the truth being that, and if our main problem is food, and I'm sure our government cannot be that careless to allow food that is harmful to our people. I would be asking, Mr. Speaker, the experts, those that support, those that do not support the use of this GMO food, to really to have a discussion on us to agree on how we move forward. But as far as I am concerned, we must choose between what is a lesser evil. We travel quite often. You don't go to America. You can go to wherever. What we eat is GMO. Yeah, so we wait for our people to die, or we give them GMO food. And for your information, Mr. Mule, you are a product of GMO. Yeah, how when you look at the history of evolution of man, from Homo erectus, Homo sapiens, and now where we are today, it's genetic transfer that has taken place between human beings to where we are today. So when you graft trees or mango, or lime and the orange, you fuse them together, produce something else different. That is genetic transfer. So let us not.
Point of order, Chair. I doubt whether I'm a product of GMO. I'm a product of my parents.
Sorry, Chair. I think, Chair, the direction we are taking is not being beneficial to the country, because the issues the Honorable Mule is raising on GMO are really not factual. And it is indeed true that the scientist is referring to the French scientist, because I was in the Agriculture Committee in the 11th Parliament, Honorable Speaker, and that scientific information has since been repudiated by other scientists. And therefore, when we are on national TV and we want to make the country believe that GMO is harmful, that there is this science, that the Honorable Mule is not availing to this committee and the country, I think we are not being beneficial. True, Honorable Speaker, if I can finish.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
If I can finish, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it is also...
Mr. Speaker,
he is not finished. Mule, hold your horses.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for that protection, because I was saying we should not use this process, Honorable Speaker, of vetting to try and play to the gallery in terms of demonizing what is otherwise government policy. The Honorable Inturi is not yet Minister for Agriculture, and as members of Parliament we will have the opportunity to interrogate through the relevant committees the issue of GMO. And there is no government policy today that is saying there is no Kenyan farmer or any Kenyan who will be forced by government to either consume or plant GMO food. It is a choice you make. And it is indeed true in America. When you travel to America, you walk into a shop, you have the choice of either buying what is organic or GMO. And I want to believe that will be the policy of government.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes, Jeanette.
Chairman, I wanted also to bring to your attention that first I want to tell my leader, the majority leader, that he is the majority leader. He is not going to become the Minister for Agriculture for the next 5 years. The man who has a chance of becoming is the nominee ahead of us, if he is approved. I think he's competent enough to answer those questions. Secondly, Chair, the issue of GMO is a government policy. It was approved at the last cabinet meeting of the government. So it is important to interrogate the nominee very well on a government policy that he's going to implement, because he's the implementing authority as the Minister of Agriculture. So, Chair, it's in our place as a committee to know from him, as the man who's going to sell the seeds of the GMO to Kenyans, whether those seeds are safe, what scientists are saying, and what is his thought to make sure that the people who want to eat organic food, and the people who want to eat the GMO, eat GMO food.
Mine was just a point of information, Madam Chair, that the theory of evolution of man, as propagated by Charles Darwin, had nothing to do with the genetic engineering.
We don't even need to go there. He had no scientific basis for saying that, so we don't need to go into that. Continue responding to the questions as raised. You had reached Russell.
Mr. Speaker, let me also hand up that...
And avoid Honorable Induri making unsubstantiated scientific statements.
Yeah, let me also hand and...
Because for sure, Mole is not a product of GMO.
I don't want to take that trajectory, Mr. Speaker, but let me end and say that the Ministry of Agriculture and Government, there are certain institutions that have different mandates. Kenya Seed Company, Mr. Speaker, has the mandate to scale up or multiply seeds that are used by our farmers, and there will be that opportunity. There is opportunity for government to grow enough or to germinate enough seed for use by enough seed for use by our farmers. Mr. Speaker, in the immediate if our immediate problem is really food, and of course government will be guided by best practices from other jurisdictions that manage or that consume or use GMO, will be guided by one of the organization guidelines. Mr. Speaker, will also be, I think, be able to take decisions and say, for example, if this is GMO, we can label the maize that you buy or the food that you buy from our supermarket, so that when you go to our own supermarkets, you are able to identify whether you want GMO or not, or choose to die of hunger and not taking GMO. So because that is a really big problem that we must really address, and address it candidly. I was asked about I think is Raso about livestock. Livestock, Mr. Speaker, is an area that has really require serious support as far as I am concerned, and I mentioned Raso that will be consulting with the farmers and the county governors, especially from the 21 semi-arid areas, on how we can be able to ensure maximum productivity and reap most for our farmers through livestock. We'll be proposing since counties have holding areas. They used to be called holding areas for livestock, whether they can see how we can be able to establish food laws so that those animals that really for us to gain more can be fed from there and the weight, and then you have maximum that you can gain, because you have an institution like KMC that will be able to take up your livestock for commercial. We also have probably proposed off-take programs so that when there is drought a time like now, and ask government to also to keep a reserve, just like we are providing for food, strategic food reserve reserves, we can also be able to persuade the government to provide for a kit that will be able to buy livestock during those drought, those very handy times, for purposes of making sure our farmers do not lose their livestock. There is also a livestock insurance program which you can also really bring in, so that in the event of loss of our animals, then the farmers really do not lose. But all this will happen, Mr. Speaker, if I have that opportunity to discuss with the people that are technical in the ministry, that will advise me, and then we'll be able to appear before you as members and the leaders of this country, because you are the people that are exercising raw power from the public in terms and agreeing on how we want really to our country to move forward. Mr. Speaker, I was asked something to do with the Ngalana Kulalu project, and from I think where I sit, the whole idea was from this was to provide proper infrastructure for investors to come in and do agriculture. But Mr. Speaker, this project, in my view, is good. Something we really need to see how to revive it, because the whole project was condemned because from the first season, because the production that came out of the 10,000 acres was not able to meet the cost of investment, and people thought that was a scandal. There is no way you can have such huge investment and expect to reap benefits in the first season. So, Mr. Speaker, to address the future problems of our country, we must face this dragon head-on, and I think we will not shy away from dealing or improving infrastructure on Ngalala Kulalu, so that we can have investors to farm. Mr. Speaker, I think Mase talked about misplacement of roads in the Ministry of Trade and the Ministry of Agriculture, and on I didn't get properly, but was it Kenya Land?
It is about the warehousing receipt system.
Correct.
There is an order that has taken that to the Ministry of Trade, yet it was established by the Ministry of Agriculture for crops and livestock products. So that misplacement, how are you going to deal with it?
Mr. Speaker, you know, when I have made sure that our farmers have produced enough food, and in consultation, working together with all the other stakeholders, the other part in terms of how that food gets to its market, I think, is an aspect of trade. Where there will be need for us to consult with my brother Moses Kuria in addressing this problem, I will be willing and ready to engage. Where the farmers probably will feel that one or two things are not clear, are not right, we won't be open to discussions. And more often, that's what we find, even when we legislate and pass law, there are those rooms where when you find there is some bit of lacuna, the intentions of the law was not properly, is not being achieved, then we always be coming back for amendments. So when it is tried, and for example, if it doesn't work, then you know the president has power to transfer functions from one ministry to another. So I remain hopeful that in whatever department or ministry and government institution or mandate is given, then being bound by the collective rule of government, then we'll be able to sort the problems of our Kenyan people together. Mukami saying the GMR is not popular. Mr. Speaker, you know, we can also, when things are done differently and the forces of demand and supply are left to fix prices in a normal market, then that would be the most ideal situation. Mukami, I think we can still achieve this if, for example, we were to ensure as government we are able to bring down the cost of inputs to a great level. If we can be able to maximize productivity on our small pieces of land, we can be able still to have the forces of demand and supply fix the prices of our produce. And I also want to tell the Kenyan people that are listening, the supply of fertilizer is not a quick fix problem of what we're having. We are trying to support farmers to apply that fertilizer to the soils that need fertilizer. And that's something that we've not really discussed seriously about, because whenever government gives us indices on fertilizer, everybody goes running to pick fertilizer, even for soils that do not need fertilizer. So as a ministry, I want to ensure that we provide necessary information, and we'll be able to test our soils and advise our farmers, and probably come up with a new platform where farmers will be able to know what fertilizer to use in what particular soil with certain pH. That way we will be able to achieve more productivity. And there are farms that have lined fallow for a long time, may require not fertilizer, and when that education is properly given to farmers, then we'll be able to succeed. It will also be necessary and important for people, our farmers, to know, and for the ministry and other county governments to know, fertilizer must be given at the right time, so that you do not give fertilizer once farmers have planted, or give the CAN for top dressing when the rains are gone. So the timely and giving of inputs or seeds, which must also be matched by a way we are able to forecast and be able to monitor weather patterns, will be able to help us increase productivity. And in that way, Mr. Speaker, I think we'll be able to get the fund on our table.
Thank you, Honorable Inturi. And now,
Chair, there is a clarification. There is a question regarding
members, look at the clock.
It's okay, Chair. We just need to do this for the purpose of this vetting. I asked Honorable Intuli regarding agricultural extension officers vis-a-vis the devolved function of agriculture in the county government. And I believe you need to give us the clear policy the ministry will come up with, whether we are going to have agricultural officers commission.
My peripheral thing.
And Chair,
The peripheral.
Chair, you can answer them together. I asked about taking farm inputs, specifically the fertilizer, closer to the farmer in the rural village. What policies government going to put in place to ensure there is a depot in every sub-county, Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
Chair, can I add on something?
Wow.
Honorable Inturi, I think we should also encourage our farmers to start using manure, what we used to do when we were young. Instead of using fertilizer, we do organic.
Chair, clarification also on one issue. Chair, it will be very absurd if the nominee lives here without saying anything about fish also. Say something about fish. Please, fish.
That question, but he never answered.
Mr. Speaker,
You have 2 minutes to attend to all those issues.
Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with Mheshimiwa.
And you've got it.
Yes, agricultural extension officers.
Taking subsidized fertilizer and seeds closer to the farmers.
Yes.
And then pyrethrum
and fish.
Mr. Speaker,
and the use of manure as opposed to petrochemical based fertilizers.
Number one, that's a very good proposal from Mukami, and farmers must listen. If you keep more livestock, whether it's poultry, cows, goats, that will be the best excellent manure to use for our crops, because they are safe, better than even the fertilizer we're talking about. Number two, agricultural extension officers, that's where we need to go. People require education, we need to educate our farmers on what we need to do. Mr. Speaker, when I was running as governor, in fact, there is no single meeting I didn't go talking about why it is important to employ extension officers. Even when I sit with the governors, I want to persuade them to have agricultural extension officers, because these extension officers can be given performance matrices on how much food should be produced in a certain particular piece of land on by how many farmers to increase productivity so that we are food secure. So I agree, I support it 100%, and I am sure this can be done. It is achievable and will not succeed if we do not tap. I also want to tell you that I think somewhere, and why we are feeling this problem, is that the Ministry of Agriculture stopped employing these agricultural extension officers some time ago. I think like almost 10 years ago, they've not been employing. And even you look at the staff at the ministry, they are quite old. So we will be coming to you so that at least you can also allocate some budget for us to be able to start recruiting members to that, extension officers, to be able to beef up our education and training capacities to the farmers. Mr. Speaker, Emase talked about what we intend to do to ensure that fertilizer and seeds are taken closer to the people. Let me also commit that Kenya Seed Company, NDC, whose farms are used for multiplication of seeds, we are going to discuss so that they can be able to produce more, and whatever support is required. Fertilizer and getting closer to the people, Mr. Speaker, we'll have either to get it done. You know, we have national cereals and produce boards, but they are not all over. This is one of the areas where we can be able to keep our fertilizer. But I think it's not because of the system that we want to use to avoid the abuse and the cartels. Probably we will have to sit in and discuss with the agrovets on how we can be able to manage those stocks so that they can also be our owning area, our owning stores for the farmers that we want is to support this kind of program. But Mase, you know, if we are to continue putting up more national cereals and produce bonds for purposes of getting very close to the location or to either the sub-location level, requires huge resources. So we'll have to see how to balance our priorities, because it is important that is done, or how we can partner with the county governments to ensure once fertilizer or seeds are delivered to the nearest depot of National Cereals and Produce Board, then they're able to support in the transfer or in the delivery chain, so that farmers can be able to get their fertilizer at the nearest points possible. Any other question?
Pyrethrum and fish.
Mr. Speaker, I think fish is another serious economic activity in this country. And Juliet, I won't tell you, Meru is producing more fish than Kisumu or your area now. We are in it. We are doing a lot of fish, and fish is transforming people. I will be talking fish farming. I will be talking to my counterpart, Muvuria, who is now in charge of the blue economy docket, where that one is, and see how to support farmers. One is the production of fingerlings, so that as we encourage our farmers to keep fish ponds, then we also have the right species that can be able to do best in trying to support our food chain, because fish is food just like any other. And the other pyrethrum, you spoke about pyrethrum, but Gekaria spoke about pyrethrum. I think there are areas in this country where pyrethrum grows, and pyrethrum, I think, is raw material of pesticides that we require for, we buy a lot of pesticide to preserve our seeds and our food. And I think time has come when we really have to sit down and see how to empower farmers, take back them to the their farmers to do pyrethrum, because is a plant, is a crop that is so beneficial to our economy. I'm inviting you, Mheshimiwa Gikaria, to share more thoughts and ideas on how this can be done, because just like I said before, that we are going to map out the country to have crops data on where we have crops growing best in whatever county, so that in terms of disseminating information, then it's part of the thing that we need to be telling our farmers, so that they don't do a try and error thing. And I'm sure this is available. It is possible.
Thank you, Honorable Nturi. I'll give you 3 minutes to make your closing wish.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the committee for giving me an hearing, and I
have given you 2.5 hours. All your colleagues have been having 90 minutes.
I think I thank you, Speaker, for that magnanimity, and probably say it's because of the docket that I serve, because of critical of the country. I want to ask you and persuade you that in your wisdom, Mr. Speaker, that this country requires all of us. The arms of government must work together, must work in tandem, and I am willing and ready to submit to the authority of this House in making sure that the legislation that we propose, the ideas that you come with, will go a long way in improving food productivity, in making Kenya food secure. If I find favor in your wisdom and approve me as the nominee to take the position of CS Agriculture, I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Franklin Mithika Linturi. I'll now, before releasing you, advise you to engage with the clerk's office. They need some documentation from you before you leave the precincts of this county hall. Sergeant, you may show the honorable nominee the way out.
Franklin Mithika Linturi.
Inu ni Mutongoi TV.